We will continue with the chapter 3, force. In that we will be discussing about friction. And here we are going to discuss about factors affecting friction. So you have learnt about frictional force. Friction is a force which opposes motion. So whenever one body starts moving over another surface, there is a force which tries to stop the movement, and that force is called the force of friction. Okay, so we will see what are the factors on which this force of friction depends. First is the smoothness of the surface. So if the surface is very smooth, then the movement will be very easy. That means the friction will be less. Okay, if the surface is a rough surface, then the friction will be more and the movement will become difficult. So you understand that when you are moving on a very smooth surface, you just slide, isn't it? It is very easy to move. When you go on a slide also, you must have realized that when you sit on the slide, you start moving down, isn't it? It is very easy to move down a smooth slide. But if the slide is having some rough surfaces, then it will be very difficult to move. So smooth surfaces have less friction. Rough surfaces have more friction. So what is the one factor on which the friction depends? The force of friction depends on the smoothness of the surface. The force of friction is more between rough surfaces and less between smooth surfaces. The next factor is the nature of the medium. That is whether the medium is a solid or liquid or gas. So here we see that solid surfaces have more friction. So the friction between two solid surfaces, one, one surface rubbing over the other surface, that creates more friction. But if a solid and liquid are moving against each other, then they will have less friction, like a boat moving in the water. So the surface of the boat and water will have less friction than a box sliding over a solid surface. Okay, so it depends on the nature of the surface also. So remember, solid surfaces have more friction, so it is more difficult to move. Solid and liquid surfaces have less friction, and solid and gases have least friction. That is, it is the very little friction. So solid can easily move in gases, or gases can move in over solid surfaces. So there is less friction. So second point is the nature of the medium. Do you remember the first point? It depended on the smoothness of the surface. Second is the nature of the medium. And third factor is the weight of the moving body. You must have realized that here you can see in the picture Iqbal. Iqbal is trying to push a very light box, and Seema is going to push a box which has more weight. Okay, it is heavy box. So who will find it more difficult to move? Iqbal or Seema? Very good. Seema will find it difficult. So that means movement is difficult means more friction is there. Okay. So here we can say that the more is the weight of the box, more is the friction. Okay. So what is the third factor on which friction depends? The weight of the moving body. Greater the weight of the body, more is the force of friction. So I hope you have understood all the three factors on which friction depends. Let us revise. First factor was the smoothness of the surface. The smoother the surface, lesser will be the friction. The rough surface will have more friction. Okay. What was the second point? The nature of the medium. Friction between solid and solid is more. Solid and liquid is less. Solid and gas is the least. Third point is the weight of the moving body. More is the weight, more is the friction. Less is the weight, less is the friction. So I hope you have understood all the three factors. Okay, and then after that we will be discussing about the different kinds of friction.